So in this section, I want to talk about what is the impact of moving one application from the data center, for example, and moving that to the cloud. I just want to show you the things that you have to consider when you pick one application as a candidate for the cloud. So this is the scenario. What will be the impact of moving one application from the on-premise data center to the public cloud, and what considerations to take into account? So here we have the current setup. In a data center, which is trusted data center, that means once you get access to the application A within the data center, there is no more authentication needed because you've been authenticated before you even got access to the application, because it is in a trusted data center. So all the authentication that was necessary has been done before that. Otherwise, you would not be able to access the data center to access the application A here, for example, or B. But within the data center, you can see that application A and application B are working together. So information from application A will go into application B. Application A has a database that you can see here, and application B takes that information from the database and displays on the screen when the user is asking for that. So continue with the current setup. The database information is actually gathered from the outside applications. For example, another application could be a mobile device, etc. All that information is kind of fed into the application A database. So I'm just setting up the scenario here, how application A is set up. It has a database. Where's that information in the database is coming from? And what do we do with that information database, and which application is interested in using that? So this is the current setup of application A and application B in a data center, which is trusted center. So the scenario, somebody might say, okay, we need to move application A, we need to move application B to the cloud. That's the scenario. So here we have the data center as it was before, applications A still here with the database, but now instead of interacting with the application B, that has gone to the cloud over here, which is a public cloud. And like I said, it could be any public cloud, could be Microsoft Azure, could be AWS, could be Google Cloud, doesn't matter, but it is a public cloud, and the application B has moved there. So now any communication from application A to application B has to go through this kind of routine. So what are the considerations we need to take into account when we have to go outside the data center, which is trusted, to a public cloud, which is non-trusted? So we have to take into certain things into consideration now. Let's list them out. So the traffic flow, as you can see now, is going to go from application A to application B, from here to there. And obviously, because we're going from a trusted to non-trusted, you need to make sure you do some encryption. So that means you're going to encrypt the data before you send it out to the cloud. And when you get to the cloud, it needs to be decrypted, and then vice versa. So this is going to be one scenario. The second scenario is, how long does it take for an application to get that data from the cloud? So there is a bit of a lag time that you have to take into consideration. So already you can see the complexity has already been added by simply moving the application, one of the applications from data center to the cloud. Now, it would make sense if both applications went to the cloud, because that interaction would stop. You'd be one entry into the cloud and everything else would be taken care of there. But here we have to split the applications, one staying where it was and the other one going to the cloud. So we have considered so far that we have to encrypt and decrypt, and also there might be some lag time to take into account. So the final setup would be like this. You have the data coming from the other sources into the application A database, which is in the trusted data center. The information from that needs to be encrypted and decrypted at the cloud level. That goes into the application B, and then we'll have to take into consideration the lag time as a result of that. So you can see this is the kind of questions we need to ask whenever you decide to choose one application for the cloud. we have to consider what is the flow, what is the traffic flow between these two applications. If it's high, it might not be a good idea. If it's high, move the both applications to the cloud at one go. If it's low, that's a good candidate. And if you have to move because of whatever reason, you have to consider the encryption and decryption, and obviously the lag time that may be taken into consideration. So if there's SLAs that says something has to respond within a millisecond or 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, then you need to consider that once it goes in the cloud, what is the impact of that? Does that go beyond the SLA? Does the SLAs get breached or not? So just to recap, you do need to do a proper analysis on all applications before you decide to move one to the cloud. There is a separate session on how to assess an application. There's another kind of I put a template together that has all the questions that I feel from my learnings that are listed that you can use as a template. But obviously you're going to make the change to add more questions or take out what's not necessary, but it has all the necessary questions that needs to be addressed before any application is considered to be a candidate for the cloud. So you need to take into consideration things like what is the data flow? What's the data of traffic? What is any data that is sensitive? If obviously we said we're going to do encryption or decryption. How many connectivity handshakes are there? And therefore, if it is high, you need to make sure that we make them as a group transfer as opposed to individual application transfer. And also the lag time. How long does it take to get a response back? Does it breach any SLAs, for example? So yeah, always remember when you do assessment, it is the most critical part of any legacy application to be migrated is that you do a proper assessment, and that assessment is always needs to be spend more time on it to make sure you group the applications which are together and take the simple one first to get more familiar with it. And then as you get more familiar and you got more and more applications assessed, there's nothing stopping you to reassess them as necessary, but you have to take into consideration that there's a trusted data center and then there's a non-trusted center, which is the public cloud. So just to give you an idea that it's not simply moving an application to the cloud as that, you have to take a lot of things into consideration.